We're back on the road with Route 66. We are entering the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is probably not a book that everybody has as their favorite. They don't have it marked as their favorite. To be honest, I've read the book of Ecclesiastes, but I've never taught it. I've taught a lot of the books verse by verse all the way through, but this isn't, if I was to toss out the book of Ecclesiastes, or if I was to say, what book do you guys want to go verse by verse through? I've never had a class say, let's do Ecclesiastes. You do not want the author of Ecclesiastes to give you marriage counseling. It's a little darker book, as we're going to see. So
what does it mean? What does it mean, Ecclesiastes?
We're going to get into that. Where we got the word from. So I have two slides here. The first slide.
Yay, you made it. Finally reached the promised land.
This is a celebration for you. You're enjoying your retirement.
Here, he just retired, so he'll have lots of time on his hands.
He's still got his He's still got
right
his
here.
CIS.
Oh, I bet.
Rich still has a CIS kid right there, so don't do it.
Okay.
No.
That's just you get them with a coffee and then you smack them with the Bible.
Well, Marcy wrote a very nice write-up on you that she shared with the ladies, and of course I read it, and I'm sure other guys did too, but what an impressive career. So thank you very much for everything you've done over at us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But the people in Zoom on a mate I'm still alive.
With your resume, I am too.
I'm talking about Marcy.
Well, your real challenge is to stay alive now going forward at home all the time. That's,
Yeah.
I did say, now you're gonna figure out, solve the crime of whose dog is pooping in your yard or walking it.
so the book of Ecclesiastes. I found two songs that represent this book, I think, from a worldly perspective and from a godly perspective. The first one is by Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And that is basically the bulk of the book. But the best one is Casting Crowns, It's Only Jesus, because the solution to the book of Ecclesiastes is everybody needs God. It's funny on these wisdom books. We have three of them, right? We got Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. The ultimate thing of Job, right, was no one was so righteous that they don't need a savior. That's the whole theme. All of that book is written for Job to understand and for us to read and understand. In the book of Job, no one is good enough that they still don't need a savior. The same thing with Ecclesiastes. This whole book, we go through 12 chapters to find out the ultimate solution, that we all need God. And we're going to take a look at that. It's funny, the Western mind and the Eastern mindset, they're a little different. In the Eastern mindset, they write their books and their literature so that the conclusion is always at the end. And so the reader has to read through all of the evidence to find the conclusion. We don't really work that way. If you ever wrote a thesis, the first thing you do is you state the truth. You state what you're going to prove up front, because that's a Western mindset. We first, and that's how my mind works. I say what I'm going to do, why I'm going to do it, and the purpose of it, and then I go out putting the evidence together to prove that fact. You already know where I'm heading. That's not how these books work, and that's true for the book of Job and the book of Ecclesiastes. These books, you don't know until the end. Fortunately, I read the first chapter of a book and the last chapter, as I mentioned before, so I get to the conclusion right away, and then I back up and read the rest of them. But these two songs kind of encapsulate the whole book. Where do we get?
Sing them?
Huh?
We're not going to sing them.
I'm not singing anything because I play the radio. So the Hebrew, we always go through what are the Hebrew in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, what do they call it? And it's Koheleth. And it means a preacher or a teacher. And so what the Hebrew Bible calls this book is, their word Koheleth, but it means teacher or preacher. When they wrote the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Bible, they translated it. It came in Ecclesiastes in the Greek version of it, and then we finally got the English version of that. And the English version of Ecclesiastes is very, very close to the Greek. It's Ecclesiastes. So, and it means in Greek, it does mean preacher and teacher, just like the Hebrew word, but it also is one who addresses an assembly. So it kind of is broadening the interpretation. I mean, what's a teacher and a preacher do? They address an assembly. So that's what Ecclesiastes means, is to address an assembly. It's interesting that we get our ecclesia, which is the bottom word there, which you guys might remember. Ecclesia, you probably have heard before. It's the same root word that we get Ecclesiastes in Greek, but we get ecclesia, which is in Matthew chapter 16, when Jesus is asking all the disciples, who do you say that I am? Or who do people say that I am? John, some say John the Baptist, some say a prophet. And then Jesus says, who do you say I am? And Peter speaks up, of course, and says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus commends him and says, worldly wisdom did not give you this. The Father in heaven gave you this information, gave you this wisdom. And, it's interesting, that verse, we can study it deep, but we're not going to. It's the divide of the Catholic and Protestant denominations. I mean, the Catholics take that statement in Greek that Jesus made and says that applies to Peter, and he will build his church on Peter. And so do the Orthodox Church. They both believe that. Of course, they both have different paths on who those preachers have been, because the Orthodox has a different pope or different leaders, not pope, but as the Catholic Church. But the Protestants understand this, and I believe the correct way of interpreting this Greek is on the statement that Peter did, on the statement of truth that Jesus is the Messiah, the promised Christ. Remember, Messiah is the anointed one, the promised one. And that's the same word we get in Greek as Christ. Messiah is Hebrew. We get it from Hebrew, and Christ we get from Greek. They're the same thing. Messiah and Christ are the same word, the appointed one, the promised one. And so on that statement of faith is what the Protestant church is built on. And that's what you become a Christian. When Jesus was asked, what must I do to be saved? Believe in the one the Father sent. That's all you do. And that's on that statement of faith. So we could go a lot deeper to that, but so that's where we get the word Ecclesiastes. It comes from the same word we get our word ecclesia, which we now translate into church. I do want to point out, church, we don't get the English word church from the Greek word ecclesia. Even though we use it in the Bible, we get it from a German word. Germanic, thank you. Germanic word that went from Germanic to French to English. But anyway, so I don't want to say, don't make the statement that ecclesia is where we get our word church. But we do, everywhere in the Bible that you see ecclesia, we do use the English word church. Anyway, just a little fact.
Fun fact.
So you've seen this bookshelf before. I won't stay out long because my wife scolded me for it. But this is the fourth book of the poetry books, the third and final book of the wisdom books. Remember, Job was the first book we went over that was considered a wisdom book. Proverbs was the second one that we went over. And now we have the book of Ecclesiastes, which is the third and final book that is considered wisdom. All five are considered in the poetry because all five have that type of literature style in them. As I said, they all have poetry, they all have proverbs. This one is a little different than maybe Job and Proverbs, but it still has the different literary styles that it's written in. So, in order to understand Ecclesiastes and wisdom in general, you really have to look at all three of the books. You don't get a great picture of God's truth and God's wisdom from any one of the books. In fact, one of the problems we have when we're reading the Bible sometimes, if you go to the epistles in the New Testament, they teach a Christian how to live your life. You can almost do the fleecing, they call it, and turn to a page, point, and then take that verse there. You might have to go the verse before, the verse after to get the true context, but you can take that biblical truth and apply it to your life and live by that. So you can get what we used to say, you can't see the forest for the trees. You can get into the trees in the epistles and understand that biblical truth that God's delivering to us. That's not true with the wisdom books. You not only have to back up and look at the book as a whole, I recommend when you're thinking, you need to understand Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes and the purpose of each book. Hopefully, like I said, when we went through this is the final one. When we went through Job, the purpose of Job is all those chapters, and we get to the end of it, and the very end of it, it's that Job still needed, no matter how righteous Job was, he needs a savior. And that's true in Proverbs. It's true wisdom begins with fearing God and living life out every day like that. And remember, fearing God is having a reverence and respect for God, not scared of God. We're never supposed to be scared of our Savior. We're supposed to have a reverence and a respect. I think sometimes maybe it's this balance that I've talked about in the past too. We have access to the Father. We have direct access because of the cross. The earthquake tore the curtain down. We have direct access to our Father, and we can run to him and we can call him Abba Father, Dad Father. But we have a reverence about God is the one who spoke the universe into existence, right? So we have to balance that reverence. Yes.
Yeah, see, you grabbed your thing, so you're getting ready to change your
Okay.
life. The second from the bottom where it says Ecclesiastes, skeptical reflection on life under the sun.
Yeah.
Is that S-U-N or S-O-N?
So that's a good question, because the end of the book, when we go all the way to chapter 12, you should consider that S-O-N, but all throughout the book, it's S-U-N. And it's interesting. We talked about it in Proverbs, the difference between a proverb and an idiom. And this is a Hebrew idiom. And like English idioms, if you don't understand them, you can be confused or not understand. An English idiom is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, if we wrote that on a plaque and 1,000 years from now, archaeologists dug it up and they looked at this, that what a hostile, evil situation. They have to worry about throwing babies out with the bathwater. You don't understand it, to mean you just don't throw all the ideas out. There's good ideas in a lot of things. So you keep what's good and you throw out what's bad. And that's what that means. But unless you know the idiom, you're not going to be able to dissect, don't throw out the baby with the bath. You're not going to understand that everybody back when that was made bathed in the same water. By the time the baby took it, it was dirty water. You might not see. Yeah, anyway. So, that's where it came up with, right? But so that's an idiom. Under the sun, Ernie, is a Hebrew idiom, and it means everything in life on this earth without God. So God's above the sun, and so everything under the sun is man's effort. So what I want you guys to do, and I might get this ad nauseum as I'm going through the teaching, everywhere we see under the sun, which is like 28 times in 12 chapters, I want you to replace it with life without God, because that's exactly what Solomon is talking about, is all of these truths that I'm talking about. And the reason I'm saying vanity and meaningless and all these other words is because it is meaningless under the sun. This world, the purpose of this world, our lives, none of this has true everlasting meaning under the sun without God. And that's the whole thing of this Bible. This book. Yeah, anyway, good question. I kind of want to give you a breakdown of this. I found this table. There's so many ways to kind of break up this book, but I'm going to break it up into 3. You got the introduction, which is very, very quick. It's chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. Okay, not a big introduction. And then the rest of chapter 1, all the way to chapter 12, verse 8, is the meat of Solomon's teaching. That's the bulk of the book, right? And then we end it with his conclusion, and his conclusion is only verses 9 through 14. So this book, the meat of this book, this goes back to, we're going to get a little introduction in the book, and then we're going to look at what most of the people look at when they read this book. They see that middle section, which, without reading the conclusion, which is only a few verses at the very end of the book, you're not going to understand. You could get halfway through this book and say, oh, I'm depressed. I'm not reading this book anymore. Because it can be depressing if you don't understand what Solomon is saying. So we're going to try to change that a little. I didn't like all the other necessarily, they're all true and they're good, but that's not my point or what I'm going to look at. So I liked this chart a little bit better. So the first introduction is everything is meaningless. That's how he starts it out. And then it goes into hard work, human wisdom. They only break it up into 2. You could literally take this and break it up into 12 chapters, because each of his chapters, 1 through 11, he tells you the meaningless of a different section, a different topic on this war in this earth. And so we're going to go through those too. And then the very end, we get our conclusion, fear God. Much like Job, right? Much like Proverbs, fear God. That's the whole purpose of these wisdom books. Where we talked about the perspective is under the sun. That's that idiom. Everything under the sun is life on this earth without God. So who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes? It's pretty common that most people claim that Solomon wrote it. The funny thing is, because of the way Solomon wrote it, there are commentaries out there that try to shoehorn in a different author. I don't know why. I don't think it makes sense. But he talks to a lot of Ecclesiastes in third person. So when he's talking about himself in third person, it opens the door for people to scratch their head and say, well, someone's writing about Solomon. But he's really talking about himself. It's like we found Solomon's journal and he was writing about himself in his journal. That's kind of how you should read the book. The word, of course, the author is claimed to be Koheleth. And Koheleth is just a teacher or preacher. Ecclesiastes, we'll go on. There's 12 chapters in it. The whole book is written in Hebrew. It's just like Proverbs. It was written during the 40-year reign of Solomon. Remember, Solomon reigned after his father David. After Solomon died, we have the divided kingdom. But for those 40 years, Solomon lived in a peaceful, thriving, prosperous kingdom, the nation of Israel. Those 40 years were the highlight of Israel's existence.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Since that was the time of peace and wisdom, why did it split? I mean, what happened politically?
So there's 2 reasons. The Bible tells us why, and it says that God was going to divide the kingdom, but not in Solomon's life, because Solomon took on foreign wives. So we know Solomon had 700 wives, 300 concubines. That is maybe worldly wisdom, but that's not godly guidance, right? God did not condone that, but Solomon did it anyway. So the Bible says, I'm going to divide your kingdom, but not in your lifetime, for the sake of David, your father David. So for David's sake, he did not divide it during Solomon's lifetime. But when Solomon died, Jeroboam,
Yes.
his son, we remember when we studied that he got 2 advice. He got advice from the older crowd and the younger
Friends.
crowd. And he went with his friends to tax the 10 tribes of the north harsh, and they said, sorry, goodbye.
But was he the reigning king at that time?
He was Solomon's son, should have been the reigning king.
Okay.
And the Bible even says, the elders, they gave him wisdom. If you ease up, they will serve you forever. And of course, he didn't take that advice. So I say that to say there's 2 reasons. The Bible clearly blames Solomon for it, but for the sake of David, he didn't do it. And then his son is used by God to split it for the sins of Solomon. A lot of people don't see that. They blame it all on his son,
Yeah.
Jeroboam, which is right. It's
Jeroboam or Rehoboam?
Rehoboam.
Yeah.
And it is his fault. It is his fault as well. The key verses here, of course, or I would say the theme of this is what do people gain from their labor and their toil under the sun. And remember, what do we change that with when I say under the sun?
Without God.
Life without God. Yes, and that all our toil is vain with life without God. And then, of course, the theme now, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Those are those two pictures. The first one from the Rolling Stones, I can't get no satisfaction, and the second one,
Casting crowns.
casting crowns,
Only Jesus.
only Jesus. Thank you guys. Paying attention, that's good. And that's the same thing here with the theme and then the conclusion of this book. So, under the sun is mentioned 29 times. So 29 times when we go through it, I don't know if I have every single one of them or every single one of them highlighted, but when you see that in your mind, replace it with life without God. Ecclesiastes 1, 1 and 2 starts out, the words of the preacher, and that word there is Koheleth. The son of David, king of Jerusalem. Kind of to me, put all doubt, right? I mean, David had a lot of sons, but he only had one that was king of Jerusalem, and that's Solomon. So to me, I don't care that you add this teacher, third-party person in there. He says, it's pretty much tells us he's the son of David, king of Jerusalem. And then it goes, verse 2, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Some of you might have the NIV or something that says meaningless, meaningless. They're all fairly good English translations, but I point out the Hebrew word because the Hebrew word is more in depth. We would almost need a sentence to explain the Hebrew word we can't really put an English word because the Hebrew word, it actually literally means vapor, breath, mist, smoke. Any of those words, the Hebrew word havel would be put in that place. But the meaning of it, the background of it is, have you ever tried to grab smoke? You know, I mean, you can't capture it, right? It just moves away. That's what they're going to be applying to here. This word also is used 37 or 8 times. So the two most important words or statements in this book is life under the sun, for you to understand, which is life without God, and havel, which is fleeting. When we did Advancing the Kingdom, we talked about the dot and the line. This is the dot, right? The dot is here today and gone tomorrow. So all of the activities of man from Solomon the teacher's perspective is havel, here today and gone tomorrow. What good does it do to build a great kingdom when someone else is going to take it over or it's going to be gone later? I mean, think about the empires. I don't care, the Babylonian Empire, the Syrian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, all of these are gone, right? The Roman Empire. They were built by man under the sun, but they no longer exist. Everything man builds eventually just becomes useless, meaningless, or replaced.
It's almost like to everything there is a season.
To everything, and that's actually part of
It's from Ecclesiastes 3. Right?
it is. It's exactly. No, that's good.
Come on, let's get up and dance. Sorry.
The line track.
Your assignment is to go to listen to that when you.
So as we march through this, I want you guys to pay attention to that, and I do want. So havel is vanity, right? So, and under the sun, I already talked about. That's what I was going to talk about. This smoke and this vapor. We kind of hit this. I want you guys though to burn under the sun in your head and havel, which is vanity or meaningless, as you're reading through this book. Okay. So what does havel mean? What it doesn't mean is worthless and meaningless and empty nonsense. So, and I put this because if you have an NIV or a thought for thought translation that doesn't do a word for word, you might get the word meaningless. And when the English, even vanity, so if I say vanity to someone, in my mind, I think of someone who can't pass a mirror without looking at themselves. That's vanity to me, you know, but that's not vanity as Havel. And same thing with meaningless. If I say meaningless in the English word, I think it's useless, it's worthless, and that's not Havel. That is not, everything under the sun is not useless. It's not vain. It's just temporary. It's a vapor. It's the dot in the line of life, or the line of history, right? So that's what that word really means. Temporary, difficult to grasp. So as we're reading this and we get to it, if you see vanity, if I use the King James version of it, or if you see meaningless in this lesson, replace that with temporary
Existence.
temporary existence.
Ibios.
Yeah.
And my translation says futility of futilities.
Okay. Yeah. So there's we try as the English translators to look at what English word best fits this particular Hebrew or Greek word as we're bringing it over. And sometimes we don't have a good. I always use the when I'm teaching about translations and stuff, I always say when Peter and Jesus were talking, and Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And he, "Feed my sheep." "Do you love me?" He asked him 3 times. In English, that doesn't make any sense, but in Hebrew or in Greek, it makes perfect sense, because he goes, "Do you agape me?" And Peter says, "Yes, I phileo you," which is the difference between unconditional love and brotherly love. And he goes all the way to the 3rd time, and Jesus says, it changes it from agape to a phileo. "Okay, Peter, do you phileo?" He lowers the standard. English words, in order for us to get that point across, we'd have to talk like I'm talking. We'd have to give you a whole sentence or paragraph to explain that. In some English words just don't justify the meaning of what the Bible's trying to get us off. Normally, 99% of the time, you can read the Bible as a book. You just read right through it, and the English words will give you the meaning that God wants to get across. Sometimes you got to pause, go back, reread that word, and then sometimes if it's really difficult, if you're having red alarms go off, you got to go back. You have to study. You have to go to the Greek or go to the Hebrew, or go to the Aramaic, and you have to look, what did God mean? Because the Bible is inerrant, and no mistakes at all. But that doesn't mean every translation of the Bible is inerrant, because man translates stuff in what they think it means. Especially if you do a word for word, King James, New American Standard, those are closer because they're word for word. They read choppy because they're word for word. But a thought for thought and then a commentary, both of those, that's a man. That God does not say every person who writes about this book is inerrant. So be cautious, go back to the truth, go back to the word. Got off a little there. So he has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in our hearts. This is really what the whole book of Ecclesiastes is about. It's about Solomon searching to try to fill that hole that God has put in our hearts. I'm sure you guys, if you've been a Christian very long, have heard that God put a hole on people's heart, and we've tried to fill it with sex, drugs, rock and roll, and everything else, right?
Fleeting.
Huh?
Fleeting.
It is fleeting. Yeah, there's nothing can fill that hole that was purposely. I always think about when I hear about this or talk about this, of a salmon. Right? A salmon has in its DNA, it has to return to its spawning area. So it goes its whole life. It goes down out. Even if it goes out in the ocean, it returns at its death to spawn back to where it was born, and then spawns and dies. You know, and that's kind of our life. Even though we may live 10 years, 20, 60, 90 years, who knows, but eventually we're going home to where we belong, what we were originally created for. Adam and Eve were created for eternity to have a relationship with God and walk and talk with God. And we're going back to that. That hole has been put in our heart. All this other stuff is meaningless, is vanity, is havel. So the Old Testament repeats this thought of only God can fill this need for us in multiple, in Psalms 42 it does, with as a deer. We talked about that when we were in the Psalms. It also does 6, my soul thirsts for you. Even Jesus talked about it. He says, everyone who drinks this water, when he was talking to the woman from the well, will thirst again, but whoever drinks the water that I give him will never thirst again. That's that promise, that emptiness, that hole that we have in our heart, only God can fill. That's the word havel. That is that emptiness that the Hebrew word is talking about there. And only God can fill that. Like, once again, you have to go all the way to the end of chapter 12 to realize that.
And then in the new, or whatever I have, the international version, I like the way it says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Kind of gives a little bit more.
It does. No, I know. And that's the book of Ecclesiastes too. Is Solomon saying, I'm searching for every possible way that I can understand this under the sun, but I can't. No matter what I try, I have until 12 when we get to that, which is the solution under God, under the SON. Life involves more than what happens under the sun. Living for God is the glory and truth goal of our life. I don't know why I put that in red either. Anyway, so a lot of this stuff that I wanted here was to talk about under the sun. I was going to be talking about what it's meaning. I kind of got into that earlier before my slide, but in the New Testament, it says the same thing here. We have, so in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do all for the glory of God. This is, once again, kind of our Western mindset. I'm jumping to the conclusion. We already know the answer that Solomon searches 12 chapters for, and the New Testament comes right out and gives us answers as well. You don't have to read the whole book to get to it. Colossians, Paul says it this way: set your affection on things above, not on the things on this earth. And of course, James puts it for what is your life? It is even a vapor. And that gets back to this whole havel again, this thing. The whole Bible we've talked about is a love letter to mankind, and it's to draw us back to God, right? Every one of the books in the Bible purpose is to teach us how to get closer to God. And Ecclesiastes is no different. Another key verse I wanted to talk about is verse 9 in chapter 1. This is still the introduction of this book, I know, so I have to pick up. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. What's that mean? There is everything that has been will be done again. Everything that has existed will exist again. Under this world with life without God. So I think you guys have gotten the main theme of what I want to try to get with under the sun and with havel, or vapor, of life. So I'm going to pick it up a little. This gets us to chapter 1. So now we have 12 chapters to do in a little bit. So each one of these chapters is structured like Solomon, the teacher, going after a different concept. And chapter 1 starts with what's the meaning? What's the meaning with life? And he goes, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? I should have read that, put that in red. Without God. So he starts alluding to it. Generation comes, generation goes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. He's observing the natural things of this world, the natural things of life. And he says, he's going to go into, I don't have time to teach all the stuff he goes into, but basically what he's saying is, You know, I watch the sun come up and I watch the sun go down. I watch the wind blow from the north and I watch it return from the south. I watch the rain come, it washes down the mountains into the ocean. The ocean never fills. All of these things he's going through all these natural things that he says, you know, it just keeps on happening. The earth is like a tank system. If any of you guys are electronics, where once you get a tank circuitry going, it maintains itself. It keeps on repetitively going over and over itself. The earth is that way. I know Kim and I have talked about life in general, or why does God do all this stuff when each generation just has to go through the same things over and over and over again. And that's what Solomon is proving here, is the weariness of life. And he doesn't come up with any conclusions, okay, in this chapter. Chapter 2, he switches. He first was looking at the meaning of life. Now he goes, I'm going to try pleasure and achievements. All in chapter 2, he goes out. Now, remember, Solomon's the wisest man. He's the king, and he's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He has access to a lot of pleasures. 700 wives, 300 concubines, all the wealth that can buy anything he wants, can build anything he wants. But he goes, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself. And behold, this third party kind of sounds weird the way he's talking about himself. And so enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futile. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? So he's going out and trying all these things. Now that's verse 1 and 2. You have to read the whole chapter to get all the things he not only tried, but he also built, and his success and all that. But in the end, he says, there is nothing better for a person than he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. For who can eat and who can have employment without him? It's kind of a funny thing. You don't really understand what he's saying there, but if you dissect what he's saying and leading up to that, he's basically saying, enjoy the work that God's giving you to do, no matter what it is. So be content in where you are in your life under the sun, because whether you're wealthy, whether you're pleasure, it's all futile the same. So enjoy what you have is the end of chapter 2 here.
But what if I want to enjoy more?
Well, and that's funny because he talks about that. No matter what you have, you always want more. Someone asked, and it's probably a different chapter if they didn't use this, but someone asked, who was it, Rockefeller, or how much money is enough? And he goes, just a little more.
Just a little more.
Just a little more.
And that's human nature.
It is human nature. It's human nature, and Solomon finds this. Everything he seeks after and goes after, just a little more pleasure, just a little more food.
And here it's saying, don't do that. Just be content. Enjoy what has been given.
Exactly. He's not saying don't do it, but ultimately, whatever you eat, whatever you drink, whatever pleasure you enjoy in this life under the sun, if you don't do it for the Lord, it's futile. It's useless. So that's what he is saying. So
It never fills the hole.
it never fills the hole. That's
All we are is dust in the wind.
All we are is dust in the wind.
Look at you.
No reference without it being a song, right?
Okay, verse.
It's like our
Okay,
daughter,
yes.
whenever she was learning to talk, you would say, do you want more? You always say, you want more? And then one time she herself initiated and she said, more and more. For her, everything.
More, everything.
More and more.
There you go.
I want some more and more.
Yeah, we're trained this way, right? I mean, think about our commercials. When we're young, I remember McDonald's commercials. I always wanted as a kid a Big Mac, and we didn't go out a lot. And if we did, my parents made us eat a Happy Meal, right, or something, or whatever. And I wanted a Big Mac, and I thought I just have a Big Mac. I always want more and more. Anyway, the same thing though. As a kid, they advertise some toy, and if I could just have that toy, and then when we get older, if I could just have that boyfriend or that girlfriend, or if I could just have that job. We're always seeking to fill that hole. If I could just have, where Solomon's saying, don't always seek for more, be content with what you have. And of course, the Bible teaches in the New Testament, if you seek after God in Romans chapter 12, he will add all these other things to you.
That's the
Seek
trick.
ye first the kingdom of God,
Yeah.
and all these things will be added unto you. So life is content when you know your relationship with God. And a lot of times we think that's just eternity, and it is. I mean, a very important part of that element is we have security in Christ, so we know where we're going when we die. There's a lot of contentment in understanding and knowing that, because people struggle with that all the time. But there's a contentment knowing that my relationship with God is I'm constantly walking and I get to these decision wise in my life, and I can go to my counselor, my friend, my father, and I can ask him, guide me, let me make the decision you want me to make, and we make it. There's a contentment in life, living life that way, understanding that I'm constantly being able to walk with God. Then Solomon gets to chapter 3, and he goes, like I said, every chapter is going to be a new topic, and he's going to basically address that chapter the same way as the previous one, but it's something new he's going to try. This time it's time and eternity. And there is a time for everything, we've said this, and a season for every activity under the heavens.
Don't do it, Duke.
And at 10, as we advance through this, it says, I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in our hearts, which we looked at earlier. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Kim expanded on that earlier. She said it gives us the bigger, complete picture of it. We used that in the introduction of that. It's chapter 3 is all about God's timing and the limitation on human. Humans sense eternity, but they can't fully comprehend God's world. When you think about it, and I've taught in the past where mankind has existed biblically in the Bible for 6,000 years. And we talked about the fall of mankind after creation, the fall. You have 2,000 years to Abraham. From Abraham to the cross is 2,000 years of history. And from the cross to 2033 is another 2,000 years. We have this 6,000 years of mankind that is being fulfilled. The Bible describes another 1,000 in the millennial kingdom where we will reign under the sun again. All 6,000 of those years, everything you can study and research in history that has occurred in those periods of time are under the sun. And then God is going to have the 1,000 years, the last 1,000 years, Christ reigning on here, on earth with us for another 1,000 years under the sun. Though all of this stuff that Solomon is searching is the same answer, even with Christ reigning, because we're going to see the rebellion that occurs after that 1,000 years. So mankind's heart has not changed, no matter where in eternity you pluck out history and study and dive into the history of mankind. I have a prism that I look through when I study history, and I like history. I'm a history buff. But I don't care if you go to the Egyptians. I mean, they conquered and put enslaved people. The Babylonians conquered and built their empire by enslaving people. Mankind's heart has not changed ever.
Groundhog Day all over again.
Right? It's Groundhog Day all over again. So man's heart is generally evil. And we are going to be creating different things to do to each other that are evil. And it's only through replacing that, filling that hole with Christ, that mankind can exist in any kind of peace and bliss and stuff. If it wasn't, and we're going to see that, of course, we don't see it now because we have the Holy Spirit who lives in the church and restrains evil, restrains Satan, and it restrains mankind from being as evil as they can be. When that is removed, you're going to see real evil. And you can read the book of Revelation and read the last 7 years of the law there and see how evil mankind is going to get on that. So Solomon's finding these things out in all these natural things, right? Then we get to 4. He sees oppression and loneliness. And we get a couple things here. So he goes, let's read chapter 4. I tried to give the introduction with the chapter and the beginning verses here. Then I looked again at all the acts of oppression which had been done under the sun, without God, right? All the acts of oppression that had been without God. And behold, I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they that had no one to comfort them. And on the side of their oppressors was power, and they had no one to comfort them. So I congratulated the dead who are already dead more than the living who are still alive. But better off than both of them is the one who has never existed, who has never seen the evil activity under the sun. He's basically just saying, the more you see, the more depressing it can be under the sun, under man's control without God, because there's evil in the world. But I also like the 2 verses we get here in 9 and 12. Two are better than one, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And of course, it would be tough to go through this life without companionship, without friends, without, Kim and I have been married 48 years now, and I can't imagine doing life without Kim, without Lyon. God has given us each other to be a partner. And I think Skip might have said this about the 2 that he always says that it's better to have 3. It says 2 are better than 1, but 3 are better than 2. And of course, the 3 would be Christ in our lives, right? Because even in the world, 2 people can bind together and become stronger and support each other. But if you don't have the 3rd, Christ, then all you're doing is the wisdom under the sun, not God's guidance and stuff like that. So
Bonnie and Clyde.
yeah. I was going to talk about things too. 2 are better than 1 unless you're trying to figure out where to go for dinner.
Right.
How the toilet paper goes on.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Squeezed the toothpaste.
Yeah, I'm squeezing the toothpaste. There are limitations to that truth, but anyway. So chapter 5, he gets into worship and wealth. And I'm just going to go to 2. Do not be hasty with words or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. This whole beginning of chapter 5, he's talking about entering the presence of the tabernacle in worship and worshiping God. And he's telling us to be cautious about it. He kind of takes a little detour on that one. And then he moves in and after the first 9 verses into 10, and he says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money. And we know that to be true, right? I mean, we know a lot of people that have money and they're suicidal. I don't understand how these people, well, I do. They don't have Christ. I remember Darryl Strawberry when I liked baseball, and he was an outfielder, and he had millions of dollars of contract. And he had 2 strikes on him because he had done drugs and been on probation. And the 3rd time, he was going to lose it all. I'm thinking, and he did. He lost it all because he did drugs again, and he lost his contract. I'm thinking, if I'm in his position, I'm hiring the 2 biggest bodyguards I know and giving them permission. If I even think about drinking, you have my permission in contract to, hit me upside the head, do whatever to keep me from doing it. No, he lost it all. So there are lots of people. Wealth does not solve problems.
It helps.
It helps.
I'm just kidding. We're getting my goal on my soul.
Not wealth, just
So when is wealth
First
a
world
problem? I mean, we could camp out. When is wealth a problem?
When it becomes your God.
Thank you. So, and that's what happens when you put faith in your wealth. Money is not evil. The love of money is the root to all kinds of evils, what the Bible says. It doesn't say it's evil. It's the root of all kinds of evil, and it's because the love of money, you replace your security with money instead of God. And I have said this before, and I think it's harder to be a Christian when you are well off and successful than it is when you're struggling. Because when you're struggling, and then, we didn't touch on it a couple chapters ago when Solomon said it's better, or does that one coming up ahead where it's better to go into a funeral than it is a wedding. He's going to say that it's better to go to and it might be, I might be getting ahead of myself, but he says it's better to go to a funeral than a feast. And you think, well, why would that be? And his logic there is, when you go to a funeral, you see the need. I mean, that you see how short and fleeting life is, and it makes you draw closer to God. I think success and difficulties is the same thing. When you're in difficult times, I am on my knees that quick, right? When you see a catastrophe heading your way, you go to prayer. But when everything's going good, sometimes we forget that we still need God. And that's basically what he's saying in this statement that he made.
You win the lottery, you gonna put that 10% down, give it to the church?
Yeah.
I'll do it later. Let me get my stuff.
Sure, that's another problem with it, right? Is your
The other things, you look at the wealth, not only in this country but the world, and yet we're riddled with poverty and crime and things that money could possibly solve.
yeah.
They don't want to solve the money for that.
Money doesn't solve problems. It just makes life a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, you have more problems when you have money because you got to manage it. You got to worry if people are going to steal it. You got to watch the stock market or whatever it is you do. It creates a whole separate bunch of problems.
Someone's talking to me. That's exactly true. In fact, Solomon says all of those things as well. I mean, if you start having to worry about who's going to steal it, who's going to take it, what's the market going to
When
do?
you're dead. I mean, it's
Yeah. Wealth is a difficult one, and I think especially in the Western world, there are, believers and people who live that are content, and they're living in dirt, grass huts,
They got food on the table.
They have
their
food on
family's
the-
right there. They have nothing to worry.
Yep. And we go from chapters 5 to 6, and 6 is a focus on just that. Satisfaction. What satisfies you? And Solomon basically says, I have seen another evil under the sun, and its weights heavily on mankind. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor so that they can lack nothing their heart's desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them. And strangers enjoy them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. Every single one of us are going. No one. What's the Bible said? Naked you came into this world, and naked you're going to leave. None of us are taking any of the wealth or any of the possessions that we have with us. This life here we have.
You don't even take your health and your young body with you.
I don't know U-Hauls and fields. So there's no U-Hauls and computer systems. This is true.
No, we don't take anything. And of course, it is a saying, you start out when you're born without teeth, and then you end on old age without teeth.
Start off in a diaper and
You end up in a diaper. True. It's all is meaningless. 6. Who knows what is good for a person in life? During the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow, who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they're gone? Solomon goes on and on about, it's just, no matter what you have, nothing is going to make you satisfied. I am going to pick it up. Wisdom. He goes chapter 7 through wisdom. It is better to go to the house. This is what I was talking about. It's better to go to the house of mourning than go to the house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. When you go to a party and a feast, you don't think about anything but gluttony, enjoying food. But if you go to a funeral, it's a reset. It's a mindset. So he talks all about that. I got so much material. I want to teach on each one of these chapters, but we're flying over in an overview here. Justice and authority is all about 8. He focuses on this. I'm just going to read the red stuff. There is something else meaningless that occurs on earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. Rule followers and people who have a real heart for justice have a real hard time with this. And we look out in the world and we see bad things happening to good people and good things happening to bad people. We don't like it. We don't understand it. Why, God? But life without God, this is the way, this is the world we live in. This is a fleeting world, and everything goes back to being content where God has placed you in your life. If I promise you, no matter how good you're doing in life, I can find a bunch of people that are doing better than us, right? So, and we can find people that are doing worse than us. Death and destiny is 9. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this life that God has given you under the sun. Over and over, chapter after chapter, when he's talking about this stuff, it screams of being content with where you are in your life. And then 9 says, I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not for the swift, or the battle for the strong, nor does food come to the wise or the wealthy, to the brilliant or favored, or to the learned. But time and chance happen to them all. We could camp here for a long time. It is true. Why does 2 people who have great, beautiful voices, and one is super successful and the other sings in their kitchen, or in their own house? They both have beautiful voices. Life has a lot of chances. Just because you have the same capabilities and talents and stuff that other people do, life is a chance. I mean, God never promised us everybody, is going to be successful in bliss.
But it's like, life is full of a lot of lies in the road.
It is.
And under the sun, it's basically a crapshoot which way you end up going.
It is. I mean, I none of us like to say that or hear, but it is the way it is. Life, you are where you are. There's a lot of reasons we are where we are. Lots of decisions we make.
Song, I love the words. It goes, life is a dance.
You learn it as you go. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow.
Yeah.
And that's like, if you're leading, you're going to do things outside of God's wills. If you're following,
You read my mind.
Hey,
girl.
songs are life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of artists that have really caught the truth of biblical truth, right? Even some secular songs have caught biblical truth. 10 is all about folly. The heart of the wise inclines to do right, but the heart of the fool goes left. I just want to show you the Bible is political. No, I'm sorry. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. 10:5-6 says, there is evil that I have seen under the sun, the sort of error that arises from the ruler. Fools are put in many high positions, and the rich occupy the low ones. I would stay here. Look at who leads us. The fools lead us. I mean, I can't believe we put people in the places we put them and lead us when, they don't know Christ. They're not making wise decisions. They all have weird concepts of right and wrong,
No one in their right mind would run.
And that's true too. We've made it so bad that good people won't run because they don't want to be attacked, torn up, and
there's so much temptation, and I mean, it's horrible. People have the best intentions when they start off, and they end up just getting corrupted
true.
by the system.
It is true. 11, he gets to uncertainty and opportunity. And this goes back to who said it's life is a crapshoot. I mean, but how do you guard against that being a crapshoot? And this is a little bit of wisdom here in chapter 11, verse 1-2. Ship your grain across the seas. Diversify, After many days, you may receive a return. Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, in 8. You do not know where disaster will come upon the earth. Just giving a little wisdom that don't put all your, we have it as a diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's just, to us, it's almost common sense, if you're reach a certain age. But the young, they don't think that way. I mean, so they're not looking at diversifying. So, and then this finally gets us to 12, the purpose and accountability. I have 2 chapters on this because the first part is chapter 12. He stays in the searching for purpose, right? But he's bringing it to a conclusion. Remember the Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. As we know, aches and pains, the older you get, the more aches and pains you have. I've said this before too. When I was young and naive, I said, it must be old grumpy people are non-believers, and young, nice, sweet little ladies are old Christians. But that's not true, it should be, but it's not, But what they're basically saying is know God when, early on, because when you get older and crankier, I think Glenn has made a point. How many people become Christians and at what age? Very early on. Most people don't become Christian after they reached a certain age. So this gets us to the last final chapter, the conclusion of all of this. Remember, he writes the conclusion and the answer at the end. Okay, not only was the teacher wise, but he was also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set orders for many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, the goads that stick that you guide an ox with. And so our Bible is that it goads us and guides us. Be warned, my son, anything in addition to them. Okay. Now 13 says, it closes out like this. This is the answer. This is the conclusion. Now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. The whole book, all those other things, and if you read it, it's a lot more than we talked about. It all comes to the conclusion like all of that stuff under the sun is meaningless unless you fear God, reverence God, respect God. So you need to understand this in all the wisdom books, but especially in Ecclesiastes. If you start reading Ecclesiastes, read chapter 12 first, and then go back and read the book. That's what my recommendation would be.
Then it doesn't sound like an Eeyore.
Yeah, because they obviously Solomon does sound like an Eeyore in this book. So why always me?